Councils when I joined were known as pale, male and stale, uh, run by old retired men or independent businessmen who could take time off during the day or between milking to hold a council meeting. And numbers when I joined women were about 29%. We had a couple of councils throughout New South Wales with no women on them and a couple with only one. And those women had a hell of a time. Now it's close to 40%. So there has been a big move, but it should be 50%. We've actually got a couple of councils in the state with more women than men. And I think women bring something different to council. I think that's another reason why we need more women to put their hands up, to get that gender balance right, to make sure that councils really do represent their community. And that means more young people, more diverse people, everything.
Every time I sit down with a wise woman, I feel grateful because these conversations aren't just interviews, they're lessons. And today I get to learn alongside you from Jenny Dowell. Jenny Dowell is best known as the Mayor of Lismore for 8 years. And 4 years after being elected as mayor, Jenny was diagnosed with breast cancer. And in 2017, after retiring from the council, Jenny became a mentor and trainer for the councils throughout New South Wales until December last year. And after 17 years, her cancer has recently returned in her spine. And we'll get into all of that today. But I'm curious, every wise woman has a beginning to her story. And Jenny, this is a big one for me. What was that moment that made you say, I'm going to stand for election as a councillor and eventually the Lord Mayor of Lismore? What made you say, I'm going to serve my community in such a huge way?
Yeah, that's an interesting question, Jen. But can I just correct that it was 4 days after I was elected mayor that
Oh,
I
I got
found
the
I
words
had
wrong.
cancer.
Sorry.
But no,
Yes.
that's fine. But just that.
Huge.
Look, I guess I've always been interested in the community. I've loved my community, and that comes from my mother. Always, was involved in her community, and I think as the eldest daughter, you often follow the things that your mother does, and so I've always combined work with community stuff. So I was heavily involved in the Lismore Neighbourhood Centre in 2003, and that's when the time when Lismore, or just before that actually, Lismore Square was being expanded, and the then Lismore Neighbourhood Centre was a house in Mackenzie Street where the square now is. And one of the services we had at the neighbourhood centre was the needle and syringe program. It worked really well. It was downstairs in this 2-story old house, and drug users would come and exchange their syringes. So it was a health and safety issue. It worked really well. And when the council then said, look, we will find you another place as a neighbourhood centre, another place to operate, they offered us what is now the Community Gateway building. It was then the library in Carrington Street in the city.
Right.
But there was a push within council not to let the needle and syringe program go. Yes, we will have the neighbourhood centre, but we don't want that program there. And I was outraged at that.
Yeah.
So I went to my very first council meeting.
Mm-hmm.
Actually, in those days, council ran several in rural halls. So this one was at Caniba. And I was absolutely shocked. The level of debate, the level of ignorance, the way that some of the councillors hadn't even read their business papers. One of them actually opened the envelope at the meeting. This was the days before electronic business papers. And I thought, God, you don't have to be a genius to do this. So that was the start. Okay. And then I'm a member of a political party. It doesn't matter which one. But Lismore works on teams running the council. So I went along to my branch meeting and said, look, I'm happy to put my hand up as one of the supporting members of a team. So, we needed 6. I said, look, put me down as 5 or 6 because we do need a change. We need a new council.
Yeah.
Well, I then thought, God, someone's going to ask me about council. And apart from this issue, I knew nothing. So for a year, I went to council meetings.
Can I just ask, were there other women on that support committee or anything, or in any roles at that time? There were?
Yes, there were. Yep. And so there was a woman who was going to run as number one and a man as number 2, and I would be further down the list. There were fabulous women on council already. Ros Irwin, who recently passed away, she became a mentor of mine. So I started going to council meetings to see what the brief was. And then I saw councillors who either were nudged to vote a certain way or clearly hadn't done their homework. One who fell asleep during the meeting and had to be woken up to vote. Now I got more and more involved. So I went to my branch meeting and I said, look, I really want to do this. And I don't want to be number 5 or 6 on the ticket. I want to be in an electable position, because you really only get elected if you're 1 or 2.
Right.
And I thought we would have a vote. I thought we would have a debate, because they were keen. And blow me down, they both said, look, we reckon you'd be terrific. We will stand aside and you can be number 1. So I ran number 1 and I got elected in 2004.
Right.
And I served a term on council. And then the next term I ran as mayor, and I got elected for mayor the next term and the term after that. So, yes, I was on council for 12 and a half years and mayor for 8.
So, hardest parts of serving a community as a councillor level or as mayor, or differences?
Different, very different. Look, there are mayors who run like I'll be really blunt, like a dictatorship. You vote my way or else. And if they've got the numbers, then the others follow. I've never been that kind of a mayor. I was a consensus mayor, and I did have the numbers. My 2 terms, I talk about a progressive or a conservative council. We were a progressive council. So we progressed things to do with the arts, to do with Aboriginal reconciliation, to do with LGBTIQA+ rights, to do with young people. So we weren't just, I believe, we weren't a council just for the rich end of town, you know, for ratepayers or for business people or whatever. We were there for everyone. So it depends what kind of person you are. And because I come from that consensus building community background, that was the way I went into council too. So as a councillor, you can take a position on something fairly early on. You can say, look, this is what I stand for and this is what I'm going to vote for. You should still keep an open mind, and you've still got to be careful you don't commit to something without knowing all the facts. So, but as mayor, that's even more important, because it's the council that decides, and the mayor, particularly in a council where there are uneven numbers, the mayor doesn't have any more voting rights than anyone else. That's 1 vote. So I would listen to both sides, and I guess I learned to say, look, thank you, I'll take that on board, that information on board when I'm making a decision, but I'm not committing to a position now. So I think it is different to when you're mayor. As a non-interventionist mayor, I didn't ever lead the debate. So I voted, of course. I didn't enter the debate. People saw how I voted. The only time I entered the debate was if it was a motion of my own, so a mayoral minute that I would put up and why I was putting up that mayoral minute, and that didn't happen very often. Or if there was a stalemate, so a councillor was away, we had a 6-all, and I had to break that deadlock. So I then used to stand and explain why I was voting a certain way. But that's a style that I learnt from our previous mayor. I had looked at mayors of all the councils around the Northern Rivers. So in those days, they weren't live stream meetings. So I went to every council meetings for every council and county councils around the region. So probably about 7 or 8, to see how other mayors did it. And I also talked to the Office of Local Government. And I then, later on in my career, I became a trainer for mayors. So I figured out what was good practice for a mayor and what was not good practice for a mayor. And I've seen lots of not good practice for mayors. So I would like to think that mine was good practice. So it was a conductor of a meeting and only intervening when absolutely necessary, to give my opinion when necessary, but not entering the debate. What happens if a mayor enters the debate or leads the debate? There is a feeling that this is the way that other councillors are expected to vote. And to my mind, that puts undue pressure on councillors to toe a certain line, and I didn't ever want that. So that's just, it's my style, but it's also the one that is recommended in the Code of Meeting Practice for mayors. So, and it's one that I then taught. So, yeah.
So I was
but
going
it's
to
not
ask,
everyone's style.
no, I was going to ask about the mentorship later, but we'll go there. But before I go there, I'm curious, what was the hardest part about that role? Like, you know, of actually being mayor, what was the hardest?
Yeah. Oh, look, the hardest part was when you saw two issues and you could see the valid parts of both, and you had to make a decision that was really hard. And to my mind, as long as you explain that position, most people would say, look, I don't agree with you, but I accept it. The hardest issues, clearly one of the hardest and the most personally challenging for me, was on fluoride. The health department wanted Lismore to, or the whole region, to have fluoride in the water. My background is in special education, child development, particularly language and speech development. And I had seen kids in poor communities with no teeth and how that was affecting their speech and language development, but also their behaviour. In the end, all sorts of other health and behavioural outcomes all through their life. So I'm a strong believer in fluoride. But our community, as you can imagine, there are many parts of the community that do not.
Absolutely.
And in fact, of the councils in our area, Byron opted not to have fluoride in the water, which meant that it's added for the other three councils that have Rouse water, but not for Lismore. And it's not in Nimbin's water because Nimbin has its own water supply. So our vote was fairly clear that council opted for fluoride. It was a very divisive issue within council, and even within my own party, there were 4 councillors from that party and 2 of us supported fluoride and 2 didn't. That's fine. It's about people's own feelings and what they believe, etc. But as a result of that, I had death threats. I was physically attacked in the street, and you know, lots of phone calls at midnight and things like that. Letters, you know, stalked, all sorts of things. So that was probably the hardest. I mean, I believed in what I was doing, and I can also see why some people disagreed with that, but council made a decision. My own view is that council should never be put into that position by the health department. They were passing the ball to us and saying, you deal with this. So that was one of the hardest. There are others too that were hard. Missing out on funding for the gallery first time round, art gallery first time round, meant we also missed a large grant from Margaret Ollie's estate because council didn't seem to be as fully committed to that gallery as she felt we were. And so we know that the gallery, the Margaret Ollie Centre, went to Tweed. That was heartbreaking at the time, but I can now rejoice for them, and Lismore has its new gallery and it's working very well. So there were some personal times of great hardship, I guess, and distress for me, but that comes with any position in public life. And so, I think if your bottom line is what is in the best interest, I used to ask myself in every decision I made, what is the best interest of my community, the whole community, now and for the future? And that bit's important because of intergenerational equity and what a future community might be left paying for because of the decisions you're making today. So it's not easy, but it's the most rewarding thing I've ever done in my public life. So yeah, I don't regret any of it.
What would you say to a woman thinking about going into a position within even council, let alone any other government department?
I'd absolutely say, and I still am a mentor for women who are thinking about it, do not doubt yourself. You bring so many life skills to this. As a councillor, you're one of a team. So you're really bringing, your point of view to it's not a consensus in that there's a vote and there's a win or a lose. Give it your best shot. Don't take it personally if you are not successful in something that you're pushing for, but go for it. It's the most, I think, even if you are one of the most community engaged people where you live, it's like an iceberg, and until you get at the council level, you don't see the whole of the iceberg. So you see all this amazing work that's going on in the community behind the scenes that you are never even aware of. So the opportunity to have a say in your community's future, I think you should grab it with both hands and go for it. It's not going to be easy, but it will be incredibly rewarding.
Many times in my life, I've thought to myself, or I've said to someone, you know, someone should do this.
Yeah. If not,
Where's someone?
Where's someone? And if not you, who?
Yeah.
And
Exactly.
if not now, when? You know, so yeah, do it. Just go for it.
So when you stepped away from the mayor role and you went into the mentorship side of things, and you did that for years, what was the most important part of that role?
I had the local government New South Wales is like the federation of all the councils. All the councils in New South Wales have an option to join it. It's like a club, if you like, and you join with an association with a fee, and that gives member councils and councillors and mayors some rights and some opportunities, and also some services that they don't directly have to pay for. And so one of them was having a mentor. And in the early days when I was mayor, I had a mentor, Genya McCaffrey, who had been mayor of North Sydney, and she was my mentor. Right. So I knew that I could, you know, I knew what a mentor role meant because I'd been there. So when I was asked to be a mentor, what happens is that someone either asks to have a mentor, or they go online and applies to have a mentor, and then there's some matching. Or people can just look at the list of mentors, ring someone, say, can I explore with you about what you do and how you mentor? And then we take it from there as far as, you know. For me, the biggest things about, I was a mentor for mayors, but I was also a mentor for councillors. Right. And there were two different roles. When you're a mentor for councillors, it's about relationships. It's about how do I get on? I'm struggling with my relationship with my fellow councillors. I don't have a good relationship with the mayor, or I want to push for this. I don't know how to go about it. So that kind of stuff. The mayoral role, there were two things that stood out as the big issues. One was dealing with a difficult councillor. You know, we've got a road councillor. I've tried everything. I can't work out how to keep this one person in the tent, how to meet their needs, but have a harmonious council. Right. And the relationship the mayor has with the general manager, that has to be really close but professional. And when things break down, they really break down. So when there's a need to either terminate a general manager's contract or employ a new general manager, that can be really tricky because the mayor can't talk to too many other people about it. They might not even be able to talk to other councillors about it because of the confidentiality. So the mayoral mentor becomes that listening post. So very different roles, and I did that right up until the election last year, September. Yep. But also during that time, my background years ago was as a teacher and then a trainer at universities, an educator and a lecturer at universities. So during COVID, local government New South Wales were asked to do a lot of inductions and for new councillors, or even candidate briefing. So you want to be a councillor, here's a session to come and find out what it's about. And they were desperately short of trainers. And so I was asked if I would do that. And because I live in the regions, I could travel, whereas Sydney people couldn't. Right. So I was out to Broken Hill and down to the Murray to Wentworth and down on the south coast to Kiama and all up the north coast where I live too. So travelled, you know, and I kept on doing that for 7 years until December last year. Right. So then that takes us to your cancer returning. But before we go there, 4 days after becoming mayor, it was a hell of a shock. Yeah, I was going to say, like, what did you feel? Because you've got leadership, community expectations, family expectations, your own. You've got absolute disbelief. I'd had a routine mammogram. but I'd had routine mammograms for years, and I'd been several times I'd been called back because I've got lumpy breasts or something went wrong. They said, look, no problems, just come back. We need to do do it again. So I was handing out at early voting, and the phone rang, and it's breast screen saying, we need you to come back. Can you come in today or tomorrow? Didn't even twig that this means it's urgent. I said, no, I'm campaigning. Vote for Jenny Dowell. I'm handing out flyers as I'm on the phone. And I said, can I come in next week after the election? All right, we make an appointment for the election was on the Saturday. So I went in on the Tuesday, and they told me straight away, you've got breast cancer at the thing. So I was absolutely shocked. I crossed the road. I burst into tears as I left breast screen because a woman who I knew there said, are you all right? And reached out her arms. And I said, no. I cried. I crossed the road, got in my car, and it was probably about 11:30 in the morning. I remember that clearly because Richard Feidler and Conversations was on.
ABC, yeah.
And I don't know who the guy he was talking to was or what his story was, but all I remember when the radio came on automatically when I put the key in the ignition, Richard said, well, how did you do that after facing that? And the guest said, I just told myself, just get on with it. And so that became my mantra, just get on with it. Look, this is something I'd stood for mayor. I really want to be mayor. I wasn't going to let treatment get in the way. So, I just thought I'm going to get on with it. So I managed the same as this time when it's come back. I worked out who I needed to tell and the order I needed to tell it, family, of course, first. And then, my fellow councillors, and then the general manager, and then staff, because I didn't want them reading it in the paper.
Yeah.
So I went through this whole routine. Control of the message is really important to me. And I wanted the message to be factual. I didn't want rumours. And I heard people saying, Jenny knew she had mayor. She's riddled with it. Why did she stand for mayor?
Yeah.
When I lost my hair and I got a wig, someone said, who does Jenny Dowell think she is? She becomes mayor and she's got to dye her hair because I chose a strawberry blonde wig with reddish tips or something. There's quite some funny stories. But I wanted to control the story and tell everything and get it out there. So I did chemo. I didn't need radiotherapy. I had my breast removed. Did all those things. I was sick. Yeah, I was really sick. But I didn't take time off. And being mayor gave me something to do and a distraction. So I got through that, and by probably Easter of the next year, so the election was in September, by Easter, I was pretty much over it. I was then on just oral chemo drugs for another 7 years. And I fully believed that I was totally cancer-free. That's it. I've got no more chance of it returning than anyone who's never had it before. So that's why this time was even more of a shock. So, yeah.
What kind of, after that shock part settled, what kind of ripples did it create around your sense of self? You packaged life and got on with being mayor and all those kind of stuff.
Yeah.
How, as a woman, what were the self-esteem, self-worth, self-everything?
Yeah, nothing. I honestly believed, get this thing off me. I was recommended for a lumpectomy, but we didn't have radiotherapy here in Lismore, and I would have had to go for 6 weeks up to Brisbane, 5 days a week for 6 weeks. And I didn't want to do that. I had a job to do. I was elected mayor and I wanted to do it. Nothing was going to stop me from doing that. So I just said, take this breast off. And because the oncologist said, look, if we do, we reckon we can avoid radiotherapy. You'll still need chemo.
Right.
Take it off. So, and I had it in my lymph nodes too. So I had all my lymph nodes removed from under my left arm. I felt that's done and dusted. So I felt that I'd breastfed 2 kids. I'd done its job. And I've still got one, so I'm a bit lopsided, and I use a just a prosthesis in the other, so I don't look too bad, although I've forgotten that sometimes when I go out. I thought, oh my God, I look down and I've got only one. But anyway, so honestly, it didn't affect. It was like, get this thing off me. I have a job to do. So it didn't affect I was very open about it.
Yep.
With the whole community and, and my colleagues and everything else. So, I had I live close to council, so I could come home and have a 20-minute nap in the afternoon if I was facing a long meeting at night.
Mm-hmm.
So honestly, I don't think it affected me much at all. It was like,
Just
get
you
this
got
thing
on with
off.
it.
I want to get on with it.
Yeah.
So,
So with it coming back, what's it been like with emotions from, family, friends, community? I saw you post on Facebook the other day, a graphic, and it just said a simple, how can I best support you, can go a long way. You don't need to solve the problems or rescue me or anything. Just what's it been like managing you are such so high profile within your community, plus family, friends and stuff. What's it been like managing at this time?
Very different, really different. I came back from, I took up bushwalking and running. I've been a competitive runner, park run, but I did 10K competitive run. So I felt fitter. 6 months ago, I felt fitter than I've ever felt in my life. And I'd taken up bushwalking, and I'd just come back from walking with the local bushwalking club in the Warrumbungles and Mount Capita. And I was doing, one day was a stage 4 19K walk, all day, tough. I came back from that and I just had a sore back and it wasn't getting any better. So I was having trouble moving and, Panadol wasn't cutting it. So I went to the doctor. When the doctor, I didn't see my regular doctor. She wasn't working that day. And I said, I don't care who I see. I just need stronger meds than Panadol.
Yep.
So the fellow I saw said, although it was only a month, he said, normally back things get better by themselves up to 2 months, but I'm going to refer you for a CT scan. And that was the Monday, the 12th of April. I remember it distinctly.
Yeah.
And on the Wednesday, I got a call from my doctor say, I need to see you. So I still didn't think anything was wrong because I've had scoliosis. So I knew that there was something, I've got these back problems. And she said, it's not pretty. I said, yeah, I know. I've got scoliosis. She said, no, you got cancer. And she's very direct and she's been my doctor for a long time. So it was a hell of a shock. So I was referred to an oncologist. It's from the breast cancer. So somewhere along the line, some little cells stayed in the body and it's not curable. It's containable. And I don't know how long I've got. So it could be that I last for a few years and it could be that some other treatment's around the corner. But I'm on medication, oral chemo. I had 1 dose of radiation on my spine and I'm on oral chemo for as long as I last. So it was a hell of a shock. I again went through the list of who I tell in the order I tell them.
Yep.
And I've got that still on my iPad. So, of course, my husband was first, then my 2 kids, then my brothers, my siblings, then my closest friends. And then I just worked down the list until I had told everyone. And then I made it public on Facebook. So that was all within about 2 weeks.
Right.
And the same as I had done last time. I thought, right, I'm going to be open about this. Yeah. I went through a terrible stage of not being able to get out of bed, not because emotionally I couldn't get out of bed, but physically I couldn't get out of bed. I was in excruciating pain and with very poor mobility. And that fortunately has eased and I'm relatively mobile, although yesterday the home modification service came and had fitted grab rails in the toilets and whatever, because I will get to the stage of needing those again. I needed them then, but I had to have help to get out of bed and stuff like that. So it's been a hell of a change. And telling family and friends that, hopefully I've got 5 years, but I can tell you there have been times in the last few months when the pain and the ability to move has been so bad, I've said, I can't do this anymore. Really, I can't do this anymore. I've certainly looked into voluntary assisted dying. I've got my advanced care directive already. So the family all knows that. So I don't know what the future will bring. I can at the moment I can walk. I can do most things, but I get very, very tired. So I've learned to say no a lot, and I do things in the morning. I'm no good in the afternoon. I have to have a sleep, and I'm having trouble with digestion and quite a few other things. But as of this week, the oncologist has reduced my medication, and although it's only day 3 of the reduced dose, I'm feeling much better than I was. So who knows? Look, I'm not going to get well. I'm certainly not going to get well, and I know that. But and I want some quality of life. But who knows what the future will bring? But that's a lot of us. I'm connected with a group of about 10 people who I know who are going through something similar, and either in a more palliative stage than I am, or have chronic long-term illnesses. We support each other privately, via messenger or phone calls or whatever. I think there are still people who will say, "Oh, you'll get through this," and when do you hope to be better? And there's a naivety in the community. So part of my role is also to paint the picture of this is what it's like, and this is the truth of the matter. And nothing anyone does is going to make it go away, but the words and support from friends has been fantastic, and I feel very lucky. I've got some wonderful people around me.
I think the support at any time in our life when we have anything challenging, the network of people that we have around us, that community, that sisterhood and just people,
absolutely
vital to our survival.
Absolutely. And and also I was using on Facebook for a while, and I will again use it from time to time, finding joy, stopping, feeling, being in the moment, finding simple pleasures, gratitude, not dwelling on the negative stuff, but also not shying away from it, not pretending all's good, being factual and truthful, whatever, but also finding joy in the things that I can do, and knowing that today might be a good day, tomorrow might be crap, the next day might be brilliant. So, being very much in the moment too is important.
Can I ask how old you are, please, Jenny?
I'm 74, and I'll be 75 in November. And from time to time, I think, will I make 75? I don't know. I honestly don't know. I don't know.
None of us really do. None of us know what tomorrow brings.
No one knows. And that's absolutely
none
true.
Of us.
We don't know what is likely to happen today or tomorrow. So it's not saying you live your life with that sense of urgency. I think it's absolutely fine to be slow, to put off tomorrow the things you don't want to do today. That's normal. But, we don't know what's around the corner, and, things can come at you literally and blindside you, and, you just don't know. So,
And it doesn't have to be cancers and things. It can be.
Oh, no.
Like anything can change in a.
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah.
I'm
curious, at 74, what is it like to say no nowadays, where maybe in the past you haven't said no? And how?
No, I haven't said no before. I've said yes to virtually everything before, and certainly when I was mayor, I if a community wanted me to do something, I found time to do it. So I said yes, and I was working probably about 100 hours a week then. Now I have an excuse to say no. So if someone says, would you like to, come out for dinner? I said, no, I can't. Night times are not good for me. So I'll say no. If someone says, look, can I? And I've said no to a couple of people who've wanted to do something like this, Jen.
Oh, thank you.
I've said no to I've said no to a couple. I've said, I'm thinking about another one that someone's approached me for. I said, look, give me another week to think about that. But I am very prepared to say no. Or someone said, look, can I make you a you know, a particular dish. And I said, look, no, I can't eat that at the moment. So I'm saying no rather than saying yes to please someone else. My husband, we had a street party for Christmas in July, and my husband said, you really should come. People would like to see you. And I said to him, I don't owe anyone my presence. If I'm not up to it, it's cold, we're going to be outside. My answer is no. You go, apologise for me, but I'm saying no. Now, normally I would have said, yes, I'll come, and I would have drag myself along because I felt this duty, an obligation.
Yeah.
I don't feel that obligation now. So
okay. I love it. Standing in your power.
Yeah.
In fact, imagine that we can learn these lessons at any age in life. To learn to say no in our 60s and 70s is fucking epic, I reckon. I'm stoked I've learned to say no, because I sure was a people pleaser when I was younger.
Yeah. And sometimes it's legitimate to say no and because,
yeah,
but it's also legitimate to say no, I don't want to do that.
Yeah, and no
or no, I can't do that.
Yeah.
Or no, that doesn't interest me. You know, so yeah, it is empowering, and it means people understand a little bit more of where you're at. You know, so yeah, I think it helps both ways.
Love it. Thank you. I'm curious, in this chapter of your life, how would you define being what I call as a present day wise woman? And how would you hope your life, your presence today ripples and helps other women? Well,
Look,
people, but particularly women.
Yeah. I think in my time, both as mayor and as a mentor, what the big thing I learned was a skill to listen. I've always had the skill of respecting confidentiality, and I think people trust me that when they tell me something, I'm not going to repeat it to anyone else. But I think the ability to listen, really listen to someone, not to solve their problems, but just to listen, perhaps in some situations to suggest a couple of things that might be worth trying if they're looking for that. But to my mind, cutting out all the rest and taking time to be truly present with someone else is really important. It's important for that person, but it's also important for you as the person who's been trusted with this story or this information. So to my mind, taking time, less busy, and that's been something I've absolutely had to learn.
Yeah.
You know, that life isn't measured about how much you squeeze into a day. It's measured by the value of the things that you do, and you know, whether at the end of the day you feel some level of peace with the day, I think is really important. So I'd say take time, you know, treasure those relationships and treasure when someone opens up to you. And, you know, that's it's a position of trust that should be really highly respected and protected.
I agree. Make me want to cry saying that. Thank you. Jenny, what is the most important thing we haven't talked about that we should talk about today while I've got you here? What have I missed?
Look, I guess the other thing that I would say is that what I've put on hold that I hope to get back to is I'm heavily involved with Red Cross.
I started to wipe my eye.
Yeah,
you did
that's right.
My heart.
I'm a branch member with Red Cross, and I was a member. You know, I was assistant secretary of our branch in Lismore, and I was a regular volunteer at the tea rooms, serving sandwiches and scones and Devonshire tea, things like that. But more, not more importantly, but bigger than that, I'm deputy team leader in the emergency services team for Lismore. We've got a team of about 22 people who step up, not just in times of flood and fire and all those sorts of things in the community at an evacuation centre or a recovery centre, but whenever there's something happening in a community that someone else is running, Red Cross is often asked to be there to provide what our biggest strength is, and that's psychological first aid. We're all trained in psychological first aid.
Wow.
which comes down to listening, actually. A couple of other features, but mostly listening. And so there's a lot happening in that space. For example, in our local halls, as a way of building, there are lots of people who live in a small rural community who have been there for generations and know each other. But then there are newcomers who come in who don't necessarily know each other. So one of the things that Red Cross does is hold these gatherings at the local hall to share stories about the history of that place and people's involvement, called Tales as Old as Time. And we've got a lot of those rolling out now, where people gather, and people, particularly women, but men too, who've lived in the area a long time, tell their story. It's notated. New people get to know, artifacts get brought along, a book or a record or a DVD or a USB of the day is collected, and that becomes the storage of knowledge for that community. So the aim is that if people are more connected in good times, then they'll be more connected in difficult times. So they'll know to reach out to their neighbours if there's a bushfire or a flood or whatever, or anything, any catastrophe, or whether it's personal or collective. So Red Cross does a lot of that. So that's been my major activity. But right now, unless it's a very short activity, like going along when there's a screening of a film about the flood, Red Cross will be asked to go along to be in the background. If anyone needs distress and leaves, we can follow them out and say, are you okay? Do you want to sit for a moment? And we're here to support you. So that psychological first aid is a big part of what I do normally. At the moment, as I said, I've had to step back from that. But I joined Red Cross for varying reasons. First of all, it's international. It's not religious based. It's about relief of suffering and care for humanity. And you can see that whether it's in Gaza or Ukraine or wherever it is in world war zones or tsunamis or whatever, that it's also here in our local community about building connectedness. And so that's what I'm looking forward to getting back to do. The team is doing a brilliant job without my actual presence, but I would love to be able to do that again because it's so worthwhile.
I think we're service-orientated beings. It's within
We
us
are.
to serve, and yet in the West, I've seen there's been a disconnect with community for a long time. And I love that it's coming more and more. I think that was something that COVID did. It brought people back to,
Yeah.
definitely me too, to realizing the importance of being directly involved in our community.
Yeah.
Because there are those times, like you say, when they're tough, if we're doing it when it's good times, when it's tough, it's
The
already,
connections are there. Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah. So yeah, that's probably about, and I don't know. I'm going away with the bushwalking club to Port Stephens next month, but I probably will only be able to do up to 5K walks. I can't do anything longer than that. But I'll treat it like a holiday and take a stack of books too, because I'm an avid reader. Read about 3 books a week, and I also write book reviews for the local library newsletter. So reading is my great escape, I guess,
Mhm.
from pain and from distress. And I spend now at this stage, because I have to lay down quite a lot. I spend a lot of my day reading, which is a great joy.
I love it. Jenny Dow, if you could go back to your 18-year-old self and give her one piece of wisdom from where you are today, what would it be?
I would say be brave. Be brave. You can do more than you think you can. I was a timid 18-year-old. I was a confident, I was young going to teachers college. So I was only 17 for my first year at teachers college. I turned 18 in November, my first year. And I think, it was a whole new world mixing with different people, whatever. But I was timid. Um, Not in my teaching. I know I was a good teacher and confident with kids, but I think be brave. You can do more than you think you can do. So that would be my message to virtually everyone, including my 18-year-old self. Be brave.
I
Yeah.
love it. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you, Jen. It's been a
You've touched me.
lovely,
My
lovely
eyes have
session.
been leaking while we've been chatting.
Oh, that's
Very
all right.
hard. You're a beautiful
Thank
soul.
you. It's
Thank you
been
for
it's
your time.
been easy and lovely. So thank you.
Thank
Mm.
you.